In the heart of ancient Mexico, long before the arrival of the Spanish conquerors, there was a people whose very existence was woven with tales of gods and legends. These were the Mexica, the ancestors of the mighty Aztecs, who believed that their destiny was shaped by divine forces. The air in their villages was thick with stories of gods who walked among them, guiding their every step, their every decision. The Mexica didn't just live, they lived in the shadow of the gods, their lives directed by the myths that explained the world around them. The Mexica were not always powerful. They began as a small, wandering tribe, seeking a place to call home. They faced countless challenges, hunger, disease, hostile enemies, but something kept them going. There was a prophecy, whispered from elder to elder, parent to child, that a god would rise among them. A god so powerful, so fierce, that he would lead them to greatness and give them a land where they could build a mighty empire. This prophecy was their light in the darkness, their hope when all seemed lost. The Mexica clung to it with a fierce determination, believing that their struggles were not in vain. They believed that every hardship, every battle, was a test from the gods, a way to prove their worthiness for the destiny that awaited them. The gods watched, and the Mexica prayed for the day when their leader would reveal himself. Their world was one where the gods were ever present. The sun rose each day because the sun god, Tonatiuh, willed it so. The rains fell because Tlaloc, the god of rain, was pleased with their offerings. Every aspect of their lives, from the planting of crops to the outcome of wars, was thought to be controlled by these divine beings. And among these gods, they believed, was one who would change everything for them, a god yet to be born, but whose power would surpass all others. As the Mexica people settled in the Valley of Mexico, they grew stronger. They built their villages, cultivated the land, and began to form alliances with neighboring tribes. But they never forgot the prophecy. They waited, with bated breath, for the day when the signs would appear, signs that would herald the coming of their god, the one who would lead them to the greatness they had been promised. The nights were filled with the sound of drums and the flicker of fires, as the Mexica priests performed rituals to honor the gods and seek their favor. They sacrificed to the gods, offering the best of their crops, their animals, and even their warriors, to ensure that the gods would look kindly upon them. These sacrifices were not just acts of devotion, they were acts of desperation, a plea for the gods to fulfill their promise. In the quiet moments, when the fires burned low and the drums fell silent, the elders would gather the children and tell them the stories of their people. They spoke of Huitzilopochtli, the god who was yet to be born, but whose spirit was already watching over them. Huitzilopochtli, they said, was destined to be the god of the sun and war, the one who would lead them in battle and bring them victory. His name was spoken with reverence and fear, for it was said that his power would be unmatched, and his wrath terrible to behold. The prophecy of Huitzilopochtli was more than just a story, it was the beating heart of the Mexica people. It was the reason they rose each morning, the reason they fought to survive. They knew that when he was born, their lives would change forever. He would demand great sacrifices, but in return, he would give them the strength to conquer their enemies and build a city that would stand for centuries. As the years passed, the Mexica became more than just a wandering tribe. They became a force to be reckoned with, feared by their enemies, respected by their allies. But still, they waited. They waited for the sign that Huitzilopochtli was near. They looked to the sky for omens, to the earth for tremors, to the animals for strange behaviors, anything that might tell them that the time had come. And then, one day, the signs began to appear. The Mexica priests, wise and attuned to the will of the gods, noticed strange occurrences: an eagle, perched on a cactus, with a serpent in its beak, an unusual alignment of the stars, a powerful vision seen in a dream. The priests fell to their knees, tears streaming down their faces, for they knew what these signs meant. Huitzilopochtli was coming. The god of the sun and war, the god who would lead them to greatness, was about to be born. The news spread like wildfire through the Mexica villages. People wept with joy, their hearts swelling with pride and anticipation. The prophecy was being fulfilled before their eyes, and they were living through it. The elders, who had carried this story with them all their lives, smiled with a knowing look, while the young warriors sharpened their weapons, ready to serve the god who would soon walk among them. Huitzilopochtli's birth was not just the beginning of a new chapter for the Mexica, it was the beginning of their true identity. With him, they would no longer be a wandering people, struggling to survive. They would become the Aztec Empire, rulers of vast lands, conquerors of nations. And they would do it all in his name, guided by his power, protected by his might. In the dark of night, as the Mexica people slept, their dreams were filled with visions of the future, a future where they stood victorious, their enemies defeated, their cities grand and glorious. They dreamed of the day when they would look upon Huitzilopochtli, and he would lead them to the destiny they had always believed in. The prophecy had kept the Mexica alive through centuries of hardship, and now it was about to become reality. Huitzilopochtli was coming, and with him, the dawn of a new era. Coatlicue, the earth goddess, was a figure of immense power and mystery. Her name meant she of the serpent skirt, and she embodied both life and death, nurturing and destroying with equal force. Her face was often hidden, her body adorned with serpents and skulls, a reminder that life and death were intertwined in the world she ruled. The Mexica people knew her as the Mother of Gods, the one who gave birth to the divine beings that governed the earth, the sky, and the stars. Coatlicue's presence was felt in every breath of wind, and every rustle of leaves, and the very earth beneath their feet. She was the source of life, the one who made the crops grow, who brought the rains, who nourished the living with the bounty of the land. But she was also feared, for with life came death, and Coatlicue's embrace was both tender and terrifying. The Mexica people respected her power, for they knew that she held the balance of the world in her hands. Her life was a cycle of creation and destruction, each turn of the wheel bringing forth new life and taking away the old. She had given birth to many gods, each with their own domain, their own power. These gods were her children, but they were also her protectors, for Coatlicue was not just a giver of life, she was a force to be reckoned with, a goddess who commanded respect and devotion. One day, as Coatlicue went about her duties, sweeping the temple on Mount Coatepec, something strange happened. She noticed a small ball of feathers, light and delicate, floating down from the heavens. It was a simple thing, yet it called to her with a power she could not ignore. Coatlicue picked up the ball of feathers and tucked it into her skirt, feeling a strange warmth spread through her. It was a warmth that settled deep within her, filling her with a sense of purpose, of destiny. Before long, Coatlicue realized she was pregnant. This was no ordinary pregnancy. She knew this child was different, more powerful than any she had borne before. The realization filled her with both joy and dread, for she knew that with such power came great danger. Coatlicue felt a life growing inside her, a life that pulsed with energy, with the promise of something greater than she could fully understand. Word of Coatlicue's pregnancy spread quickly among her children, and it did not take long for fear and jealousy to take root. Her eldest daughter, Coyolxauhqui, was the first to feel the sting of betrayal. Coyolxauhqui was the goddess of the moon, a powerful and beautiful deity in her own right. But when she heard that her mother was carrying another child, one destined to surpass them all, her heart turned cold with envy. Coyolxauhqui could not bear the thought of another sibling taking her place, taking the power she had fought so hard to hold. She gathered her brothers, the Centzon Huitznahuas, the 400 southern stars, who were fierce and loyal warriors. Together, they plotted to stop this child from being born, to end the threat before it could rise and eclipse them all. They decided that the only way to protect their power was to kill their own mother. As Coatlicue's belly swelled with the life inside her, she felt the growing tension around her. She knew what her children were planning, knew the terrible choice they had made. But she did not fear for herself. Her thoughts were only for the child she carried, the child who was destined to change the world. She spoke to the life inside her, whispering words of love and protection, knowing that this child would need all the strength she could give. The day came when Coyolxauhqui and her brothers decided to carry out their plan. They armed themselves with weapons, their hearts filled with anger and fear. They climbed Mount Coatepec, determined to end their mother's life and prevent the birth of the god they feared. But as they approached, something extraordinary happened. The child within Coatlicue spoke to her, his voice strong and clear. He told her not to be afraid, that he was ready to be born, that he would protect her. And in that moment, Coatlicue knew that this was no ordinary child. This was Huitzilopochtli, the god of the sun and war, the one who would lead the Mexica people to greatness. His power was already beyond anything she had known, and she felt a surge of hope and pride. As Coyolxauhqui and the Centzon Huitznahuas closed in, Coatlicue gave birth. But Huitzilopochtli did not come into the world as a helpless infant. He was born fully grown, fully armed, with a burning fire in his eyes and a heart filled with righteous fury. He sprang forth from his mother's womb, his weapon, the serpent-shaped Zyakobel, in hand, ready to face his enemies. The battle was swift and fierce. Huitzilopochtli struck down Coyolxauhqui without hesitation, his fury unstoppable. Her body fell from the mountain, broken and defeated, her blood staining the earth. The Centzon Huitznahuas, seeing their sister's fate, tried to flee, but Huitzilopochtli pursued them relentlessly, cutting them down one by one. The mountain shook with the force of the battle, the sky darkened with the weight of what had transpired. When the dust settled, Coatlicue stood in awe of her son. Huitzilopochtli had saved her, had proven himself the most powerful of her children. But in his eyes, she saw something more. She saw the future of the Mexica people, a future that was now certain. Huitzilopochtli was not just her son, he was the sun itself, the warrior god who would lead the Mexica to their destiny. Coatlicue's heart swelled with pride, but also with sorrow. She had lost many of her children that day, children who had been consumed by fear and jealousy. But in Huitzilopochtli, she saw the continuation of her legacy, the strength of the earth and the power of the gods united in one. The Mexica would thrive under his guidance, and she knew that her role as the mother of gods was fulfilled. Coatlicue, the earth goddess, had given birth to the sun. And in doing so, she had ensured that the light would never fade from the world, that the Mexica would rise to greatness, guided by the power of the god who had been born from her. In the shadowed depths of the night sky, Coyolxauhqui, the moon goddess, glowed with a cold, haunting beauty. She was revered, feared, and adored by the Mexica people. But beneath that serene exterior, her heart was anything but calm. Coyolxauhqui, like the moon itself, was often hidden in darkness, her thoughts clouded by envy and fear. She ruled the night with her brothers, the Centzon Huitznahuas, the 400 southern stars who lit up the sky like a blanket of shimmering fire. Together, they were powerful, unchallenged in their dominion over the heavens. Yet, all that power wasn't enough to quell the storm brewing within Coyolxauhqui's heart. The news of Coatlicue's mysterious pregnancy had struck her like a blade. Her mother, the revered earth goddess, was carrying another child, a child said to be destined for greatness, a child who would overshadow them all. Coyolxauhqui could feel the ground beneath her tremble with the weight of that prophecy, and the thought of it filled her with dread. The moon goddess was not alone in her fears. Her brothers, the Centzon Huitznahuas, shared her unease. They had stood by Coyolxauhqui's side for as long as they could remember, the stars of the night sky dancing at her command. But now, a new star was set to rise, one that would outshine them all. The jealousy that gripped Coyolxauhqui's heart began to spread like wildfire among her brothers. They whispered among themselves, their voices trembling with a mixture of anger and terror. How could their mother betray them like this? How could she bring another into the world, knowing it would spell their end? The whispers grew louder, more urgent, until they became a roar in Coyolxauhqui's ears. She could not stand the thought of being cast aside, of losing her place in the heavens to this unborn child. The more she thought about it, the more her fear turned to rage. Coyolxauhqui was a goddess of the night, but she would not allow herself to be consumed by darkness. She would fight to protect her place, her power, and she would do whatever it took to stop this child from being born. Her brothers looked to her for guidance, their eyes filled with the same desperate fear that churned within her. They were loyal, fierce, and ready to follow her lead. Coyolxauhqui could see the uncertainty in their eyes, the question they didn't dare to voice. But she knew what needed to be done, and she knew that her brothers would stand with her, no matter how terrible the act. In the dead of night, beneath the cold light of her own moon, Coyolxauhqui made her decision. She gathered her brothers close, the 400 southern stars that twinkled like flames in the sky. They would strike before the child could be born, before he could rise to challenge them. They would stop this threat at its source, even if it meant turning against their own mother. The plan took root in Coyolxauhqui's mind, twisting and curling like a serpent. It was a dark and terrible thing, born of desperation and fear. But Coyolxauhqui could see no other way. She knew the power this child would wield, a power that would eclipse even the brightest star. If they waited, if they allowed him to be born, it would be the end of them all. The moon goddess could feel her heart harden, could feel the icy grip of resolve tightening around her soul. Her brothers, the Centzon Huitznahuas, were ready. They were warriors, fierce and loyal, and they would follow Coyolxauhqui to the ends of the earth if she asked. She could see the fire in their eyes, the determination that matched her own. They had sworn to protect their sister, to protect their place in the heavens, and they would not falter now. Together, they would strike, together, they would stop this child before he could take his first breath. The night air was thick with tension as Coyolxauhqui and her brothers prepared for what was to come. The moon hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the land. There was no turning back now, no room for doubt or hesitation. The goddess could feel the weight of her decision pressing down on her, but she would not waver. This was the only way. She had to protect herself, her brothers, and the life they had known. As they made their way to Mount Coatepec, where Coatlicue dwelled, Coyolxauhqui's heart pounded in her chest. She could feel the cold steel of her weapon against her skin, could feel the presence of her brothers at her side. The stars above them seemed to pulse with a strange energy, as if they too were holding their breath, waiting for the inevitable clash. The climb was steep, the path treacherous, but Coyolxauhqui did not falter. Her resolve was as unyielding as the moonlight that guided their way. The wind howled around them, carrying with it the scent of earth and blood. The closer they got to the summit, the more her fear turned to anger, the more her desperation turned to cold, calculated determination. This child, this unborn god, would not be allowed to take their place, to steal the power that was rightfully theirs. When they reached the top, the sight of their mother, Coatlicue, filled Coyolxauhqui with a mixture of rage and sorrow. Coatlicue was beautiful in her way, a goddess of the earth, of life itself. But now, she was the enemy. The life growing inside her was a threat that had to be extinguished, a threat that could not be allowed to come into this world. Without a word, Coyolxauhqui raised her weapon, the cold blade glinting in the moonlight. Her brothers followed suit, their faces set in grim determination. There was no going back now, no second chances. They had to act, and they had to act quickly. The moon goddess could feel the pulse of life within her mother's womb, could feel the power of the child who was waiting to be born. But just as they were about to strike, something changed. The air around them seemed to crackle with energy, a force unlike anything they had ever felt before. Coyolxauhqui's heart skipped a beat as she realized what was happening. The child inside Coatlicue was not just any child. He was a god who would not be stopped so easily. Huitzilopochtli, the sun god, was already stirring, his power growing with every passing moment. Coyolxauhqui's eyes widened with fear as she felt the ground beneath her shift. The child was awakening, his presence already palpable, his power already greater than she had imagined. Her brothers hesitated, their confidence faltering in the face of this overwhelming force. But there was no time for fear, no time for doubt. They had made their choice, and now they had to see it through. With a battle cry that echoed across the mountains, Coyolxauhqui and her brothers launched their attack. The night erupted in a clash of light and shadow, of steel and fire. But even as they fought, even as they gave everything they had, Coyolxauhqui knew in her heart that it was too late. The child was too strong, too powerful. Huitzilopochtli, the god of the sun, had already been born, and there was nothing they could do to stop him. As the battle raged on, Coyolxauhqui felt the weight of her choices crash down upon her. She had acted out of fear, out of jealousy, and now she was paying the price. The moon goddess could see the flames of Huitzilopochtli rising around them, could feel the heat of his power burning through her. In that moment, she realized that she had underestimated the strength of the sun, the power of the god who had been born from her mother's womb. In the end, Coyolxauhqui and her brothers were defeated, their rebellion crushed beneath the might of Huitzilopochtli. The moon goddess fell, her body broken, her spirit shattered. The Centzon Huitznahuas, the 400 southern stars, were scattered across the sky, their light dimmed forever. And as the sun rose, its fiery light banishing the darkness, Coyolxauhqui's last thoughts were of the child she had tried to destroy, the child who had now taken his place in the heavens. In the stillness of the night, under the watchful eyes of the stars, something miraculous stirred in the heart of Coatlicue. The earth goddess, the one who carried the world's burdens on her broad, powerful shoulders, felt a sudden, inexplicable flutter deep within her. It was as if the very air around her had shifted, as if the earth itself was holding its breath. She looked down and saw it, an eagle feather, delicate and light, yet pulsating with a force that seemed to defy its fragile appearance. Coatlicue reached for the feather, feeling an irresistible pull, as if the gods themselves had placed it in her path. As her fingers closed around it, a warmth spread through her, a warmth that grew and grew until it became a burning fire, igniting something new and fierce within her. She clutched the feather to her chest, her heart pounding with the realization that this was no ordinary gift from the heavens. This was the beginning of something extraordinary. Before she could fully comprehend what was happening, Coatlicue felt a spark of life taking root inside her. It was sudden, overwhelming, and unlike anything she had ever known. A divine presence, powerful and ancient, had entered her, and she knew with absolute certainty that she was carrying a child destined for greatness, a child who would change the fate of the world. This was not just any child, this was Huitzilopochtli, the warrior god, the one who would rise from her womb fully armed and ready to battle the forces of darkness. The prophecy had been whispered among the gods and the people alike. A great deity would be born, one who would lead the Mexica to glory, one who would protect them from their enemies and guide them to their true destiny. And now, that prophecy was unfolding within Coatlicue. The weight of it was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. She could feel the power growing inside her, could feel the life force of Huitzilopochtli as it became stronger with each passing moment. As the days passed, the earth goddess's pregnancy became impossible to hide. Her other children, sensing the shift in the air, were filled with unease. Coyolxauhqui, her daughter, the goddess of the moon, was the first to voice her fears. She had seen the light in Coatlicue's eyes, the radiance that seemed to emanate from her very being, and it filled her with a dread she could not shake. The prophecy loomed over them all like a dark cloud, and the thought of a new, more powerful god rising among them sparked a fire of jealousy and fear in Coyolxauhqui's heart. But Coatlicue, though burdened with the weight of her children's fear, remained resolute. She could feel the strength of Huitzilopochtli growing within her, could feel his spirit preparing for the battle that awaited him. The world around her seemed to hum with anticipation, the very earth beneath her feet vibrating with the energy of the child she carried. The days passed like a fevered dream, each one bringing her closer to the moment that would change everything. And then, on a night when the stars burned brighter than ever before, Coatlicue felt the first stirrings of labor. The pain was unlike anything she had ever experienced, sharp and unyielding, yet there was a strange comfort in it, a sense of purpose that drove her forward. She knew this was no ordinary birth. This was the birth of a god who would emerge from her fully formed and ready to face whatever lay ahead. As the night deepened, Coatlicue's cries echoed through the heavens, a sound that seemed to shake the very foundations of the earth. The gods themselves paused to listen, knowing that something extraordinary was happening. The air was thick with tension, as if the entire universe was waiting for the arrival of this new, powerful force. And then, with a blinding flash of light, Huitzilopochtli was born. He did not enter the world as a helpless infant, but as a fully formed warrior, his body gleaming with divine energy, his eyes blazing with the fire of the sun. In his hands, he held a serpent of fire, a weapon that pulsed with the power of the gods. He was ready to face the threats that awaited him, ready to fulfill the prophecy that had foretold his birth. Coatlicue, exhausted but filled with a deep, unshakable pride, gazed upon her son. She could see the strength in him, the determination, the unyielding spirit that would carry him through the battles to come. He was everything the prophecy had promised and more, a god born for war, born to protect his people and lead them to greatness. As Huitzilopochtli stood before her, his presence seemed to fill the entire world. The earth trembled beneath his feet, the sky above him crackled with energy. He was a force of nature, unstoppable and fierce, and his enemies would soon learn to fear his name. With a final glance at his mother, Huitzilopochtli turned his gaze to the horizon, where the forces of darkness waited. He knew what he had to do, knew that his birth was only the beginning of a long and arduous journey. But he was ready. Born of divine circumstances, shaped by the prophecy that had foretold his coming, Huitzilopochtli was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. With his serpent of fire in hand and his heart burning with the fierce love of his mother, he stepped forward into the world, ready to claim his destiny. The air was heavy with tension as the first light of dawn crept over Mount Coatepec. The earth seemed to hold its breath, knowing that the blood of gods would soon stain its soil. On the mountain's steep slopes, Coyolxauhqui and her 400 brothers, the Centzon Huitznahuas, prepared for a battle that would change the heavens and the earth forever. Their hearts pounded with a mixture of fear and rage, their thoughts consumed by the betrayal they believed their mother had brought upon them. They had made their choice, to strike before Huitzilopochtli could draw his first breath. But the moment they stepped toward the peak, a blinding light erupted from the cave where Coatlicue had labored through the night. It was as if the sun itself had descended upon the mountain. Out of the light, a figure emerged, casting a long shadow across the trembling earth. Huitzilopochtli stood tall, his form glowing with the fire of the gods, his eyes burning with a fierce, unyielding determination. He had not come into this world unarmed. In his hand, he held a serpent of flame, its fiery tongue flickering in anticipation. Coyolxauhqui's heart faltered for just a moment, the sight of her newborn brother striking a chord of fear within her. But the anger that had fueled her for so long quickly overpowered her doubts. She had sworn to end him, to save her mother and herself from this new god's wrath. With a cry that echoed through the heavens, she charged, her brothers following close behind, their spears and swords gleaming in the morning light. Huitzilopochtli did not hesitate. As Coyolxauhqui rushed toward him, her eyes blazing with fury, he raised his serpent of fire and unleashed its deadly power. The flames danced through the air, hissing and crackling as they met Coyolxauhqui's weapon. But it was no match for the god of war. With one swift motion, Huitzilopochtli struck her down, the force of the blow shattering her body and sending it tumbling down the mountainside. The earth shook as Coyolxauhqui's lifeless form hit the ground, her body breaking into pieces that scattered across the landscape. Her brothers, the Centzon Huitznahuas, hesitated, their courage wavering as they saw their sister's fate. But Huitzilopochtli showed no mercy. He turned his fiery gaze upon them, his serpent of flame still crackling with energy, and one by one, he cut them down. The battle was swift, brutal, and decisive. Huitzilopochtli's power was unmatched, his strength beyond anything the Centzon Huitznahuas had imagined. They fell beneath his blade, their cries silenced by the relentless force of the god who had been born for this very moment. As the last of the 400 brothers lay dead at his feet, Huitzilopochtli stood alone on the blood-soaked peak of Mount Coatepec. The wind howled around him, carrying with it the echoes of the battle, the cries of the fallen. But the god of war remained unmoved, his heart hardened by the knowledge that this was his destiny. He had been born to protect his mother, to defend the Mexica people, and to ensure that their enemies would never rise against them. The battle on Mount Coatepec was not just a victory, it was a symbol, a testament to the strength and resilience of Huitzilopochtli and the Mexica people. The earth, now stained with the blood of the gods, bore witness to the dawn of a new era. Huitzilopochtli's triumph marked the beginning of a powerful empire, one that would rise from the ashes of this battle and grow to dominate the world. For the Mexica, the story of Mount Coatepec was more than just a myth. It was a reminder that their god was ever vigilant, ever ready to defend them against all who would threaten their way of life. It was a story of sacrifice, of loyalty, and of the unbreakable bond between a mother and her child. But most of all, it was a story of survival, of the Mexica's determination to thrive in a world where only the strongest could endure. As the sun climbed higher into the sky, its rays illuminating the now silent battlefield, Huitzilopochtli gazed out over the land that would one day be his kingdom. The echoes of the battle still lingered in the air, a solemn reminder of the price that had been paid for this victory. But Huitzilopochtli knew that this was only the beginning. There would be more battles to come, more enemies to vanquish, and more blood to be spilled. But he was ready, his heart steeled by the knowledge that he was the chosen one, the god who would lead the Mexica to greatness. Coyolxauhqui's cries echoed through the air as she fought against the inevitable, but Huitzilopochtli's power was unyielding. With a single, decisive stroke, he severed her head from her body, sending it spiraling into the night sky. The once mighty moon goddess, whose rage and envy had driven her to defy the will of the gods, was now nothing more than a lifeless form. Her head, glowing with an eerie, silver light, ascended into the heavens, taking its place among the stars. The Mexica people would forever look up at the moon, seeing in its glowing orb the tragic end of Coyolxauhqui, the sister who had dared to challenge the god of war. But this was not just a tale of defeat, it was a transformation. As her head took its place in the sky, it became the moon itself, a constant reminder of the cosmic order that Huitzilopochtli had restored. The phases of the moon, the Mexica believed, were the reflection of her agony, her eternal punishment for rising against her brother. When the moon was full, it was her head, gleaming brightly, swollen with the pride and power she once wielded. But as the days passed, it would begin to wane, as if her light was being gradually consumed by the memory of her defeat, shrinking away until only a sliver remained. And then, in the darkness of the new moon, she would disappear entirely, as if the shame of her loss had finally engulfed her. This cycle of light and darkness, of growth and decay, mirrored the eternal struggle of life itself. To the Mexica, the moon was not just a celestial body, it was a living symbol of the consequences of defiance, of the natural order that governed their world. Every month, as the moon waxed and waned, the people would remember Coyolxauhqui's story, a tale passed down through generations, etched into the very fabric of their existence. The sight of the moon hanging in the sky would evoke a mix of awe and sorrow, a reminder of the power of the gods and the fragility of mortal life. For Coyolxauhqui, once a proud and powerful goddess, had been reduced to nothing more than a symbol, her glory and strength stripped away by her own actions. The Mexica knew that in her defeat lay a lesson: to challenge the gods was to invite destruction, to defy the natural order was to court ruin. Yet, in her defeat, Coyolxauhqui also became a part of the cosmos, her light guiding the Mexica through the darkness of night. They would look to the moon for guidance, for reassurance, knowing that even in her downfall, she still played a vital role in the balance of the universe. Her light, though dimmed, was a beacon, a constant presence in the heavens, reminding them that the gods were always watching, always present in their lives. The story of Coyolxauhqui's transformation was woven into the very culture of the Mexica, shaping their rituals, their beliefs, and their understanding of the world. It was a story of both warning and comfort, a reminder that even the most powerful could fall, but that even in defeat, there was a place within the cosmic order. The moon, with its phases and its light, was a testament to the enduring power of the gods and the eternal cycle of life and death that governed all existence. As the Mexica gazed up at the night sky, they saw not just a celestial body, but a story, a living myth that connected them to their gods, to their ancestors, and to the very fabric of the universe. Coyolxauhqui's light, soft and pale, would wash over them, filling them with a sense of both melancholy and reverence. They knew that the God's will was absolute, that the order of the cosmos was unchangeable, and that even in the face of tragedy, there was beauty to be found. And so, with each passing month, as the moon waxed and waned, the Mexica would remember Coyolxauhqui, the goddess who became the moon, her story forever etched in the sky above. It was a story that spoke of power and punishment, of defiance and defeat, but also of transformation and the enduring connection between the gods and their people. Every morning, as the first light pierced the darkness, the Mexica people felt the presence of Huitzilopochtli. The warmth of the sun wasn't just a natural phenomenon, it was the very breath of their god, the force that held their world together. Huitzilopochtli wasn't just a deity, they saw him as the lifeblood of their civilization, the embodiment of the sun's fierce power and the relentless spirit of war. The Mexica believed that Huitzilopochtli fought each day to rise from the underworld, battling the forces of darkness that threatened to consume the world. Every sunrise was a victory, every beam of light a testament to his strength and perseverance. But the battle was never over. As the sun climbed the sky, the struggle continued. Huitzilopochtli's journey across the heavens was not a peaceful ascent, but a warpath, a daily march against the shadows that sought to drag the world back into chaos. In the heart of the Mexica, there was an unbreakable bond between their survival and the god who led them. Huitzilopochtli was the warrior who lit the sky, whose flames scorched their enemies and whose presence kept the darkness at bay. They understood that without him, the world would fall into eternal night, and they would be lost. Every ritual, every sacrifice, was a plea for his continued strength, a recognition that their fate was intertwined with his. Huitzilopochtli's journey was not only physical but spiritual, a reflection of the Mexica's own struggles. His fight against the darkness mirrored their own battles, against enemies, against hunger, against the forces that threatened their way of life. As the god of war, he was their leader in both the cosmic and earthly realms, guiding them to victory with his unyielding spirit. To fight for Huitzilopochtli was to fight for the sun itself, to ensure that the world would see another day. The sun's daily rise was a promise, but it was also a demand. Huitzilopochtli required strength from his people, for his battles were not fought alone. The blood spilled in his name, the offerings made at his temples, were not mere rituals, they were acts of communion, a sharing of power that sustained the god as much as it sustained the people. Every sacrifice was a renewal of the bond between Huitzilopochtli and the Mexica, a reminder that their destinies were one. As the sun set, the sky would bleed with the hues of battle, red, orange, and gold, as if reflecting the wounds of Huitzilopochtli's daily struggle. But even as the light faded, the Mexica knew that their god was not defeated. He would descend into the underworld, only to rise again, ready to fight another day. The night was a time of uncertainty, but it was also a time of faith, a faith that Huitzilopochtli would emerge victorious, as he always had, as he always would. The Mexica revered Huitzilopochtli not just for his power, but for his resilience, his unbreakable will. He was the force that kept the cosmos in balance, the reason the stars did not fall, the reason the earth did not tremble. In him, they saw the embodiment of their own strength, a reminder that as long as they honored him, they too would endure. Huitzilopochtli was the light in the darkness, the fire in their hearts, the god who gave them life. To the Mexica, Huitzilopochtli was more than a deity, he was a living presence, a force that pulsed through their veins with every beat of their hearts. His energy was their energy, his fight was their fight, his victory was their survival. And so, they worshipped him with the reverence he demanded, with the understanding that without Huitzilopochtli, there would be no tomorrow, no light, no life. In every sunrise, they saw his triumph. In every sunset, they saw his promise. Huitzilopochtli was the sun, the war, the life that burned within them all. And in their devotion, the Mexica ensured that his fire would never go out, that the world would continue to turn, that they would continue to live under the watchful eye of the god who held their fate in his hands. The heart of Tenochtitlan pulsed with life, but nothing stirred the souls of the Mexica like the towering presence of the Templo Mayor. Rising from the earth like a mountain forged by the gods, this sacred temple was more than stone and mortar, it was the very embodiment of their faith, the physical manifestation of Huitzilopochtli's might. Every stone laid was a testament to the Mexica's devotion, each step a prayer etched into the earth, leading to the heavens where their god ruled with fire and fury. As the sun rose, the first rays bathed the temple in a golden glow, a silent acknowledgement from Huitzilopochtli himself. This was his home, his sanctuary, the place where the divine and mortal worlds intertwined. The Templo Mayor was the axis of the Mexica universe, the point where the heavens, earth, and underworld met, and at its heart was Huitzilopochtli, the god who demanded not just worship, but sacrifice. The Mexica knew that Huitzilopochtli's power needed to be nourished, his strength renewed through rituals that transcended the ordinary. The temple was not merely a place of gathering, it was a stage where life and death danced in the sacred rhythm of existence. The air around the Templo Mayor was thick with incense, the scent mingling with the prayers that rose like smoke to the sky. Priests, adorned in the regalia of their god, moved with reverence, their steps guided by the ancient rituals passed down through generations. But it was the blood that spoke the loudest, the lifeblood of the sacrifices that stained the temple's stones and seeped into the earth, binding the Mexica people to their god. Human sacrifice was not an act of brutality in their eyes, it was a necessary offering, a sacred duty that ensured the sun would rise again, that Huitzilopochtli would continue his celestial battle. The chosen ones, often captives from wars fought in Huitzilopochtli's name, ascended the temple's steps, knowing their fate but also understanding their role in the cosmic order. Their blood was the fuel that kept the universe in motion, a gift to the god who gave them life. The drums beat a thunderous rhythm, echoing across the city as the ritual began. The Mexica people gathered below, their eyes fixed on the priests who stood at the summit, where the heavens seemed to touch the earth. The sacrificial stone, cold and unyielding, awaited its burden. There was no fear in the eyes of the chosen, only a solemn acceptance. This was their destiny, intertwined with that of the gods, a fate that ensured the survival of their people. As the priest's hand moved with practiced precision, the knife, a blade of obsidian, sharp as the god's own wrath, descended. The offering's heart, still beating, was lifted to the sky, a tribute to Huitzilopochtli. In that moment, the boundary between mortal and divine blurred, and the sun blazed a little brighter, as if accepting the gift with a silent promise of another day. Every drop of blood spilled on the altar was a prayer, every life given a thread in the fabric of existence that the Mexica wove with their faith. The Templo Mayor was not just a temple, it was the heart of the world, where the gods were honored, and the balance of the universe was maintained. The sacrifices were not senseless acts of violence, but sacred rituals that sustained the very essence of life. As the sun set, casting long shadows over the temple, the people knew that their god had been appeased, that Huitzilopochtli would continue his eternal battle in the heavens. The Templo Mayor stood as a silent sentinel, a reminder of the sacrifices made, the blood that had been given so that the sun might rise again. The Mexica lived under the gaze of Huitzilopochtli, their lives devoted to ensuring his strength never waned. The Templo Mayor was the center of their world, a place where gods and men met in a sacred bond forged in blood and faith. The sun's journey across the sky was a testament to their devotion, each sunrise a victory in the battle for survival. Huitzilopochtli, the god of the sun and war, reigned supreme, and the Templo Mayor was his throne, a symbol of his power and the Mexica's undying loyalty. The Mexica warriors stood at the edge of the battlefield, hearts pounding with a fire that only the divine could ignite. Above them, the sun blazed fiercely, a constant reminder of their god's presence. Huitzilopochtli, the mighty sun god, watched over them, his eyes filled with the hunger for conquest. Each warrior felt the weight of his gaze, a force that drove them to fight, to conquer, to expand their empire in his name. In every heartbeat, the Mexica heard Huitzilopochtli's voice, urging them forward, promising glory and strength. They believed they were chosen by the gods, destined to bring order to the world through blood and battle. This wasn't just about expanding territory, it was about fulfilling a divine mission, a sacred duty that Huitzilopochtli had entrusted to them. Their every victory was a step closer to fulfilling the gods' grand vision, a vision where the Mexica ruled supreme, blessed by the gods themselves. On the battlefield, the warriors' spirits burned with devotion. Their hands, though stained with blood, were guided by a higher power. They were not merely fighting for land or power, they were carrying out the will of Huitzilopochtli, the god who had given them life and purpose. Every enemy they felled, every city they claimed, was an offering to their god, a proof of their loyalty and faith. Huitzilopochtli's presence was felt in every blow they struck, and every war cry that echoed across the battlefield. His strength coursed through their veins, turning fear into courage, doubt into resolve. The sun, his symbol, burned high above, a beacon of his eternal power. As long as the sun shone, the Mexica knew they could not falter, for their god demanded nothing less than total victory. Each conquest was more than a military achievement, it was a sacred act of devotion. The Mexica warriors believed that with every city they conquered, with every enemy they vanquished, they were not only expanding their empire, but also feeding the strength of Huitzilopochtli. They saw their military success as a direct reflection of their religious devotion. The more they conquered, the more they pleased their god, and the more they pleased their god, the more unstoppable they became. In the heart of every Mexico was the unshakable belief that they were the chosen people, destined to rule and to expand their empire in the name of Huitzilopochtli. Their battles were not just physical conflicts, but spiritual crusades, where victory meant the survival and prosperity of their people. The Mexica knew that as long as they remained true to their divine mission, as long as they continued to offer their victories to Huitzilopochtli, their empire would thrive, and their god would remain strong. The Mexica warriors moved with a purpose that went beyond mere strategy or tactics. They fought with the conviction that their victories were not just for themselves, but for Huitzilopochtli, who had guided them from their humble beginnings to the heights of power. Each time they raised their weapons, they did so with the knowledge that they were fulfilling their god's will, that they were part of something far greater than themselves. The blood they spilled on the battlefield was a sacred offering, a tribute to the god who demanded both their devotion and their strength. In return, Huitzilopochtli blessed them with the power to conquer, to expand, to dominate. The connection between their military successes and their religious devotion was undeniable, and it fueled their belief in their divine mission. With every victory, the Mexica's empire grew, and so did their faith in Huitzilopochtli. They believed that their god walked with them, fought with them, and that as long as they remained loyal to him, they would continue to triumph. Their conquests were not just a testament to their military prowess, but a reflection of their unwavering devotion to the god who had chosen them for this sacred task. The Mexica's divine mission was clear: to conquer, to expand, to bring glory to Huitzilopochtli through blood and battle. They fought not just as warriors, but as instruments of their god's will, knowing that with each victory, they were fulfilling the destiny that Huitzilopochtli had set before them. The battlefield was their altar, the blood of their enemies their offering, and their victories the proof of their faith. In the hearts of the Mexica, Huitzilopochtli's voice resounded with the promise of glory, of an empire that would stretch as far as the sun's light could reach. They were not just expanding their territory, they were carrying out a divine mandate, a sacred mission that would secure their place as the chosen people of the sun god. As long as they continued to conquer in his name, the Mexica believed they would be unstoppable, for their god had given them a mission, and they would see it through to the end. The Mexica people moved through their days in a world where Huitzilopochtli's name echoed in every corner of their lives. His presence shaped their governance, their laws, and the very fabric of their society. The sun god, with his fierce, radiant energy, was not just a distant deity but a living force that guided their every action. In the heart of Tenochtitlan, the influence of Huitzilopochtli was felt in the corridors of power. The rulers of the Mexica, the kings who sat on their grand thrones, were seen as the earthly representatives of the sun god. Their authority was not merely political but divine, believed to be sanctioned directly by Huitzilopochtli himself. Every decision they made, every law they passed, was done in his name, to uphold his will and ensure his favor. The laws of the Mexica were crafted with a deep reverence for Huitzilopochtli's principles. Justice and order were seen as reflections of the god's own power. The harshness of punishment, the rigor of legal codes, were all understood to be a way of maintaining the balance and favor of the sun god. To uphold these laws was to honor Huitzilopochtli, to fail was to risk his wrath. The entire legal system was a sacred mechanism designed to keep the divine order intact. Priests and warriors were the chosen ones, tasked with upholding the sacred duties of their god. The priests, clad in elaborate robes and adorned with symbols of Huitzilopochtli, performed rituals that were believed to ensure the god's continued blessing. They spoke the sacred words, offered the sacrifices, and channeled the divine energy that was thought to sustain the universe. Their role was not only religious but deeply woven into the social structure, as they were the intermediaries between the gods and the people. Warriors, on the other hand, were the living embodiments of Huitzilopochtli's strength. Their bravery in battle was seen as a direct reflection of the god's might. Every warrior's success in combat was attributed to the favor of Huitzilopochtli. Their victories were celebrated with grand festivals, filled with music and dance that honored the sun god. To be a warrior was to live in constant devotion to Huitzilopochtli, to seek his approval through acts of valor and strength. The daily life of the Mexica was permeated with the essence of their sun god. From the moment the first rays of dawn touched their faces, the people were reminded of Huitzilopochtli's watchful eyes. Their homes, their marketplaces, and their public spaces were adorned with symbols of the sun god, his presence felt in every corner. Even the simplest tasks, from planting crops to crafting goods, were done with the knowledge that they were under his gaze. Festivals dedicated to Huitzilopochtli were among the most vibrant and sacred events in Mexican society. These celebrations were not just about honoring the god, but about reaffirming their connection to him. The streets would fill with the sounds of drums and the scent of incense as people gathered to pay tribute. Rituals included dances and offerings meant to please the sun god and ensure his favor. During these festivals, the Mexica came together as a community, their devotion a testament to the powerful influence of Huitzilopochtli on their lives. Every aspect of Mexican society was a reflection of their devotion to Huitzilopochtli. The way they governed, the laws they followed, the roles of their priests and warriors, and their daily routines were all intertwined with the god's influence. His mythology was not just a story but a living force that shaped their world. To honor Huitzilopochtli was to live in harmony with his divine will, to ensure that every action, every law, and every ritual was in line with his sacred energy. In this world, Huitzilopochtli was more than a deity, he was a guiding light, a force that molded every part of the Mexica's existence. His presence was a constant reminder of their divine mission, their duty to uphold the cosmic balance, and their place in the grand tapestry of life. Through their unwavering devotion, the Mexica ensured that Huitzilopochtli's influence remained a powerful, heart-stirring force in their lives. In the heart of Mexica's civilization, Huitzilopochtli was more than a god, he was a living symbol, etched into the very essence of their culture. His image was everywhere, a testament to his power and influence. Each depiction in their art told a story of his divine might and the reverence they held for him. Huitzilopochtli's figure was captured in vibrant murals and intricate sculptures, his image both fierce and magnificent. Artists carved his form with a sense of urgency, as if every chisel stroke and every splash of color were a tribute to his celestial power. His face, often portrayed with a stern, commanding expression, reflected his role as the god of war and the sun. With a serpent's tongue and a warrior's demeanor, his presence in art was as intimidating as it was inspiring. Sculptures of Huitzilopochtli adorned temples and public spaces, where his gaze seemed to pierce through the ages, reminding all who saw him of his eternal watchfulness. In the codices, the Mexica artists wove his stories into the delicate, hand-painted pages. These codices, filled with intricate symbols and vivid scenes, preserved the mythos of Huitzilopochtli. Each illustration was not merely decoration but a powerful narrative, encapsulating the god's role in the cosmos and his connection to the Mexica people. The codices served as both sacred texts and historical records, capturing the essence of Huitzilopochtli's legacy and ensuring it would be remembered by future generations. Huitzilopochtli's influence extended beyond visual arts and into the realm of Mexica poetry, songs, and stories. His mythological adventures and heroic deeds were immortalized in lyrical verse and musical compositions that echoed through the streets and temples. Poets sang of his victories and his celestial battles, their words carrying the weight of reverence and awe. Each song was a tribute, a celebration of Huitzilopochtli's power, and a reminder of the divine favor he bestowed upon the Mexica. The Mexica's oral traditions played a crucial role in preserving Huitzilopochtli's legacy. Elders and storytellers would gather around, their voices weaving tales of the sun god's exploits and his significance in their lives. These stories, passed down from one generation to the next, were not mere recountings but living histories. They kept Huitzilopochtli's spirit alive, ensuring that his divine presence remained a vibrant part of their culture. The telling of these stories was an act of devotion, a way of honoring the god through the preservation of his memory. In every piece of art, every song, and every story, Huitzilopochtli's legacy was kept alive. His presence was a constant, vivid reminder of the Mexica's deep connection to their gods and their place in the world. Through their creativity and their stories, the Mexica ensured that Huitzilopochtli's divine essence continued to inspire and guide them. His image, his tales, and his power were not just relics of the past, but living forces that shaped the heart and soul of Mexica culture. In the final days of the Aztec Empire, the air was thick with despair and disbelief. The once mighty Mexica civilization, thriving under the divine gaze of Huitzilopochtli, faced an onslaught that would shatter its foundations. The arrival of Spanish conquistadors marked the beginning of a devastating era. As their ships loomed on the horizon, the Mexica people looked to their god, Huitzilopochtli, for salvation, but the sun god's presence seemed to falter in the face of this new and relentless threat. Huitzilopochtli had been the heart of Mexica's strength, the divine force driving their conquests and victories. His image had been woven into the fabric of their society, from the towering temples to the very essence of their daily rituals. But as the Spanish forces advanced, their weapons and horses brought an overwhelming power that even the mightiest god seemed unable to counter. The Mexica warriors, who once fought with the fury of their sun god, now found their faith shaken and their resolve tested. In the chaos of the conquest, the decline of the Mexica civilization became all too apparent. The once vibrant ceremonies and rituals dedicated to Huitzilopochtli dwindled, replaced by the sound of clashing swords and the cries of a people grappling with defeat. Temples that had once stood as symbols of divine power now lay in ruins, their sacred walls marred by the encroaching forces of change. The Mexica people watched in horror as their world crumbled, and with it, their unshakable faith in their god began to waver. Huitzilopochtli's once glorious worship faced a profound transformation in the wake of the Spanish conquest. As the conquistadors imposed their own beliefs and the cross began to replace the sun god's symbols, the Mexica religion was driven underground. The divine essence of Huitzilopochtli, once a beacon of strength and unity, was forced to adapt to a new reality. Old temples were repurposed, and the rituals that had once celebrated his glory were suppressed, hidden away as relics of a vanishing past. Yet, even as the public worship of Huitzilopochtli was stifled, the spirit of the sun god did not vanish completely. In the whispers of old songs and the shadows of clandestine ceremonies, the memory of Huitzilopochtli lingered. The Mexica people, though faced with overwhelming odds, held onto fragments of their traditions. Huitzilopochtli's legacy, though transformed and obscured, continued to beat within the heart of those who remembered. The fall of the Aztec Empire was a profound loss, not just of an empire, but of a deeply held belief. Huitzilopochtli, the once mighty sun god, had seen his domain shattered and his worship changed forever. Yet in the darkest hours, as the sun god's light seemed to flicker, his spirit remained a symbol of resilience and an echo of a lost grandeur. The Mexica people, now faced with a new era, carried with them the weight of their god's stories, a poignant reminder of a past that had shaped their very being. In the aftermath of the Spanish conquest, the clash of cultures left an indelible mark on Mexico's spiritual landscape. As missionaries worked tirelessly to replace the old gods with their own beliefs, something remarkable happened. Huitzilopochtli, the sun god who once commanded the Mexica's fierce loyalty, did not vanish into oblivion. Instead, he found a new form, woven into the very fabric of colonial Mexico's evolving identity. The blending of Huitzilopochtli's ancient mythology with Christian beliefs was not a simple merging of ideas, it was a complex dance of survival and adaptation. As Spanish priests set about converting the Mexica people, they encountered a fierce and resilient devotion to their deities. In a bid to bridge the divide, elements of Huitzilopochtli's story began to intertwine with the narrative of Christianity. His fierce and unyielding nature was subtly mirrored in the heroic tales of Christian saints. The sun god's role as a powerful protector and his fiery resolve found echoes in the saintly figures that were now revered. This blending was not merely a matter of convenience, but a testament to the resilience of Mexica culture. Huitzilopochtli's story, once filled with vibrant ceremonies and grand rituals, was adapted to fit into a new context. Images of the sun god were reinterpreted through Christian lenses, his fiery attributes now symbolizing divine light rather than divine war. Churches were built upon the ruins of ancient temples, their altars becoming the new focus of worship. The Mexica's rich traditions found a place in this new world, though often veiled in the guise of Christian symbolism. The adaptation of Huitzilopochtli's story in colonial religious practices reflects a profound and poignant transformation. As the Mexica people were drawn into the orbit of Christian teachings, they did not abandon their heritage but rather fused it with the new faith. Rituals and celebrations took on new forms, blending old gods with new saints in a way that allowed the people to retain a sense of their identity while navigating the demands of their colonizers. Festivals once dedicated to Huitzilopochtli now incorporated elements of Christian celebration, creating a tapestry of faith that spoke to both the old and the new. In modern Mexican culture, the influence of Huitzilopochtli's legacy endures, a silent thread connecting past and present. While overt worship of the sun god has faded, his essence persists in the cultural expressions of the Mexican people. Traditional festivals, folk art, and popular stories continue to echo the grandeur of the sun god. The fiery spirit of Huitzilopochtli can be seen in the vibrant celebrations and the enduring pride of a culture that has managed to keep its heart beating strong despite centuries of change. Huitzilopochtli's journey through the turmoil of conquest, adaptation, and survival is a testament to the power of cultural resilience. The god who once commanded the Mexica's loyalty has found new life in a transformed world, his legacy woven into the very fabric of Mexican identity. The blending of his ancient mythology with Christian beliefs reflects a profound and moving story of how a culture can endure and adapt, carrying its essence through the ages. In the heart of modern Mexico, where the ancient past and contemporary life intertwine, Huitzilopochtli, the fierce sun god, is making a powerful comeback. Once a deity revered by the Mexica, his influence is stirring anew, stirring the souls of a nation seeking to reconnect with its roots. Huitzilopochtli's resurgence in contemporary Mexican identity is nothing short of remarkable. As Mexico grapples with its complex heritage, the sun god has become a symbol of resilience and pride. His fiery spirit, once harnessed in battles and rituals, now ignites a sense of cultural rebirth. Mexicans today, whether through festivals, art, or public celebrations, are reclaiming their heritage with a renewed vigor. In the streets and ceremonies, his presence is felt not as a distant relic but as a vibrant force that shapes the nation's sense of self. Modern cultural and political movements are also embracing Huitzilopochtli's legacy. In times of social change and struggle, his image has become a rallying cry. His strength and determination are reflected in movements fighting for justice, equality, and cultural preservation. Leaders and activists invoke his name as a symbol of empowerment and resilience. Huitzilopochtli's mythology, with its themes of battle and triumph, resonates deeply with those who seek to overcome adversity and forge a brighter future. In literature and art, the reinterpretation of Huitzilopochtli's mythology is infusing old tales with fresh perspectives. Artists and writers draw on his rich history to craft stories and images that capture his essence while speaking to modern experiences. The sun god appears in vibrant murals, evocative poetry, and contemporary narratives, bridging the ancient and the modern. His fierce, protective nature and his role as a guiding force are explored through new lenses, reflecting both reverence for the past and a vision for the future. This revival of Huitzilopochtli's spirit is a testament to the enduring power of mythology and the ways in which it can adapt and thrive in new contexts. In the echoes of his ancient battles and the warmth of his divine light, there is a profound connection to a shared heritage that continues to inspire and shape the present. In the soul of Mexico, the story of Huitzilopochtli pulses with an ageless energy, shaping history and identity like a powerful current. Even centuries after the fall of the Mexican Empire, the influence of this fierce sun god remains a vivid thread in the fabric of Mexican culture. Huitzilopochtli's impact on Mexican history is profound. His legend, etched into the very essence of Mexican society, forms the backdrop against which much of Mexico's past is written. His divine role in the Mexico worldview, as both a warrior and a savior, was more than just mythology, it was a living force that drove the Mexica to great heights. His guidance in battles, his demands for sacrifices, and his central place in rituals and ceremonies all played critical roles in the rise and dominance of the Mexican Empire. The echoes of his reign continue to resonate through the annals of history, underscoring the god's immense influence on the course of Mexican civilization. Understanding the Mexico worldview without Huitzilopochtli's myth would be like trying to read a story with half the pages missing. The sun god was not merely a figure of worship but a reflection of how the Mexica perceived their place in the cosmos. His myth was a living narrative, symbolizing the eternal struggle between light and darkness, order and chaos. Every battle he fought was a metaphor for the challenges faced by the Mexica, and every victory was a testament to their divine favor and strength. His story helped frame their understanding of life, death, and the universe, embedding his legacy into the very core of their beliefs. Even in the modern era, Huitzilopochtli's story endures in the cultural consciousness of Mexico. His legacy is not confined to the past, but pulses vibrantly in the present. Festivals and celebrations, art and literature, and even political movements draw on his powerful image. The sun god's essence is woven into the national identity, a symbol of strength, courage, and resilience that transcends time. In the dance of shadows and light that marks the seasons, and the vibrant colors of murals and the stirring verses of poems, Huitzilopochtli lives on, reminding all who encounter his story of a heritage that continues to inspire and shape the Mexican spirit. His eternal legacy is a bridge between past and present, a reminder of how myths can shape history and identity across centuries. Huitzilopochtli's influence, deeply embedded in the culture, serves as a testament to the enduring power of stories and their ability to forge connections through time.